On January 5th, drivers started paying more to drive into Midtown Manhattan. $9 for most vehicles. There are arguments for and against what's called congestion pricing. There's also a lot of Long Islanders who still have questions about the program. Newsday transportation reporter Alfonso Castillo joins me to answer those questions on this Newsday Live conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. I am Ken Buffa, Newsday anchor here. And Alfonso, I want to get right into it. So explain, what exactly is congestion pricing?
Yeah, for a lot of New Yorkers, this is probably a term that they have heard over years or even decades and not maybe ever really been sure what it meant. And now it's here and starting to realize the impact of it. Essentially, congestion pricing is a system of using tolls to discourage people from driving into Manhattan. Manhattan is one of the most congested areas in the entire world. And the idea is if you put new tolls in Manhattan, what's known as the congestion relief zone, which is below 60th Street, you will discourage some people. They'll leave the car at home. They'll take the train instead. This has been in place in other cities throughout the world, Stockholm, London, for years. And after a lot of court battles and studying, it is finally here as of January 5th. Most cars pay $9 if you've got Easy Pass during peak hours, Monday through Friday. That's between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. It's discounted 75% overnight, 9 to 9 on weekends. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, a lot of people probably wouldn't even note it until they see their Easy Pass bill, get it in the mail and see that you've been paying more.
Yeah, and a lot of people are sounding off. I know we spoke to some commuters, so let's take a listen at some of the questions that they still have.
Why do they feel like that they can just take money nonstop? Listen, I don't drive every day. I used to. The biggest problem, honestly, it's never in the city. It's just getting to the city. I come from Long Island, right? I get it. But when is it ever going to end?
So some folks feel the MTA already makes money with fares and tolls. So when is enough enough?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a sentiment that is shared by a lot of people, especially out here on Long Island. We did a poll a couple of years ago, and 3/4 of voters were pretty strongly against congestion pricing. And as he touched on, it is this feeling that the MTA already has their hands in your pocket a lot. There was $15 billion in COVID aid that they got. They got another $1 billion bailout from the state a couple of years ago. As he touched on, fares and tolls going up pretty regularly. We're in line for another fare and toll increase later this year. All that said, I do think it's important to understand that there are kind of different pots of money, and a lot of what's been brought up in terms of all the aid and the bailouts and the fares and tolls, that goes to the MTA's operating budget. It basically keeps the lights on. This money goes to a separate pot. It's the capital program, and there is a $15 billion hole that MTA says needs to be filled. And as kind of distasteful as this might be for a lot of commuters, there are folks who say that if it wasn't this, it'd be something else, and it might hurt more. It might be something like new tolls on crossings that aren't tolled right now, like the 59th Street Bridge. It might be higher taxes that would affect more people than the relatively few that drive into Manhattan regularly.
So a lot of folks do have a question about where the money is going. I want to take a listen to this question.
Where is the money exactly going? Is it going to the subways, which would be excellent, or is it going to pay for more pensions, which would not be good?
So yeah, I think there is that question. Where exactly is this money going? You touched on it a little bit, but just to clarify, where's my money going?
It is not going on pensions, at least not directly, so you could rule that part out. Again, some of this kind of is in the weeds, and it takes understanding the MTA's finances, but this money specifically under law, the congestion pricing plan was adopted by the state legislature in 2019 with the goal of the toll revenue going to fund a portion of the MTA's most recent capital program. It was something like $55 billion. This goes to big ticket infrastructure projects, stuff that we've seen out here like the third track of the Grand Central Madison, buying new trains, They put forth a new capital program every 5 years, and there's a $15 billion hole in the most recent one. This money is supposed to go there. 80% of it is for buses and subways in the city. The remaining 20% gets split between Metro North and the Long Island Railroad. For the Long Island Railroad, it's stuff like accessibility projects at some stations. It is new trains and infrastructure upgrades throughout. I mean, I think the best way to realize what the money goes to is what was potentially on the chopping block when we thought we might be losing congestion pricing, when the governor pulled the plug, and there was an accessibility project in Forest Hills and Hollis. Those were both put on hold. So that'll give you an idea. For buses and subways, they're looking to buy new electric buses. They are upgrading signals on subways. As far as worker pay, again, worker pay doesn't directly come out of the capital program, except some overtime does, in as much as overtime is required to do some of these capital projects. That does come potentially from this pool of funding.
And one of the things commuters I've been listening to have a problem with is that not everyone pays the fare. So let's take a listen to what their concern is.
There are people that drive. You pay for certain things that come with the car. You pay for the insurance, the gas, all these other maintenance fees for the car. But then the congestion pricing, I understand the point of it. However, there's also the toll fare evaders.
To his point, he's saying like congestion pricing is great, that's great, but why are we not spending more resources on getting folks to actually pay up like everybody else is?
Yeah, again, it's something I've heard a lot. The MTA says they lose something like $700 million a year in fare and toll evasion, which is in the ballpark of what they're looking to make from these new congestion pricing tolls. So again, some of this goes to different pots of money. Your fare and toll dollar typically goes to the operating side, paying employees, labor costs, all of that. These are going to the capital side. But it's also worth pointing out that there is a thought that congestion pricing could actually make this toll evasion problem even worse, because now the way they're charging these tolls is taking pictures of license plates, and the MTA already has this growing problem of what they call ghost cars, people hiding their license plates, obstructing them. Now, potentially, there's a thought that these new tolls are going to be kind of another incentive to drive more people to try to evade tolls. On their part, the MTA says that they're on top of it, whether it is a stronger enforcement by police or new policies. On the subway side, they've been experimenting with new turnstiles that are supposed to be kind of fare evasion proof. Some people might have even seen these pictures of spikes on the top of the turnstiles to kind of keep you from hopping over them. They just put out some data that shows for the first time in a long time it has fallen a little bit. There's been a little bit of a decrease in fare and toll evasion. So they say they're doing everything on their part. What they'd like to have happen is stronger laws that would let them really, more strongly go after fare and toll beaters, and that's going to be up to the legislature.
Now, some commuters also have a concern about being tolled or fared way too many times just to get to where they're going. I want you to listen to this concern from this commuter here.
I don't understand why would they, I don't know, like $9, it couldn't like make it like a more easier for like the Easy Pass people, that because I have Easy Pass in my car as well, and bumping everything else like the Lincoln Tunnel and also the other 5 bridges as well, $5 more is, if it's gonna be congested in the city, let it just be in the city. People are driving through Manhattan, but anything else out of the 5 bridges should have just left the price the same as well.
So, kind of a two-part question. How did we get to $9? And also, what about the folks who are already paying for bridges and tunnels to get into the city?
Yeah, well, so as far as the toll amount, it is important to remember that as of a few months ago, it was a lot more than $9. It was originally supposed to be $15. So the MTA conducted a study and an environmental assessment, and they ended up with a range of tolls. On the low end, it was going to be $9. It could have been as high as $23. And
$23?
$23 we could have been
Yikes.
paying. So they put together a panel of experts and included a representative from Long Island to come up with a final kind of policy. They arrived at $15, which they felt was high enough to generate the revenue that they need for infrastructure investments, but also in the range of affordable for most drivers. They were ready to go with this plan, and back in June, the governor, 3 weeks before it was supposed to take effect, decided it was too expensive. She pulled the plug on it and then brought it back right after Election Day with the low end, the $9 toll, with the plan to gradually increase it to the $15. So theoretically, $15 is coming by 2031. But her point was that it is a 40% reduction from the 15. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it.
But it's still coming.
Sure, yeah.
It's still coming. Okay.
Yeah, another way of looking at it is it's $9 more than we were paying before. But again, they need to find an amount that generates the money that they're looking for, while also discouraging people from coming into the city. As far as kind of the double tolling, yeah, that is the case. If you're paying to get into the congestion zone from any of the tunnels that lead directly in, whether it's the Queens Midtown or the Cary, you're paying again. So you're paying those tolls, and then you're paying again as soon as you come through the tolls. They are offering rebates, essentially, a credit of up to $3 off the total toll if you use one of those crossings.
So is it possible to get into Manhattan by car for free or no?
Yes, it still is. I mean, there are fewer options now, but in the congestion relief zone, which is 60th Street and below, the West Side Highway and the FDR Drive are exempt from the tolls. So if you stay on those, you're fine. You will not get charged even if you drive through the district. The moment you get off of them into any street within the congestion relief zone, you're going to get hit with the toll. If you come in on the 59th Street Bridge and you take the upper level, which exits onto 62nd Street, and continue north, you could also avoid the toll.
All right, so commuters have a question of whether this is doing more harm than good, so let's take a listen quickly.
The question is, are you going to continue running your business in Manhattan, given the fact that it's more expensive now for employees, if you will, to come to work?
So again, is congestion pricing doing more harm than good? What do the numbers show so far?
Yeah, this is a really big concern, certainly before congestion pricing took effect. You heard a lot of concerns like this about the harm that it would do if you're discouraging people from driving into the city. There is a thought by some that congestion, in a way, is a good thing. It shows that New York is doing well, it's vibrant, it's bustling. I think people who are stuck in that traffic might have something different to say, or if you're waiting on a fire truck or an ambulance to make its way through busy traffic, you might feel differently. As far as employers and employees, how it affects them, MTA makes the point that the vast majority of people commuting to work in Manhattan, in the neighborhood of 90%, including out here on Long Island, already take transit. I mean, the universe of people that drive to work in the city is relatively small, and those people who take transit stand to benefit from the investments that would be made in transit. And, just generally being able to walk through Manhattan and not be as concerned about getting hit by a car or something like that. As far as what the numbers show, according to the MTA, and they just updated them, they say it's working. And anecdotally, most people I talk to that have...
Working how?
Working in that there are fewer cars going into Manhattan. By the MTA's count, it is about 30,000 fewer cars entering the congestion relief zone or the central business district below 60th Street every weekday. That's a reduction of about 5%, which is far short of what the governor was promising. She talked 13%. We'll see if they get there, but at the moment it's closer to 5%. But that aside, what the MTA points to as evidence that's really working are travel times are a lot faster, and people are seeing this. I've heard people saying that, half hour shaved off their commute. In the crossings, the East River and Hudson River crossings coming into Manhattan in the morning, you're talking travel time sped up by 30%.
Wow.
Inside Manhattan during the PM peak, a lot of the busier streets seeing similar reductions, 20, 30% faster. So there's absolutely evidence that there are fewer cars in the city and the traffic is moving faster.
So my last question for you is, what, if any, hope is there for drivers who do not want to pay these tolls?
Yeah, I know there are still people holding out hope that this isn't really here to stay.
It's here and it's going to grow. The price is going to grow, you just mentioned before.
Yeah, but there are still some things in play. For one thing, there are a number of lawsuits that are still pending that challenge congestion pricing. So far, early rulings on that have kind of gone the MTA's way, in as much as nobody's ruled to take it down. I mean, there have been some questions about whether everything was done on the up and up, but there hasn't been a judge yet who has ordered it to be taken down. The other big X factor is the new president, Donald Trump, a very strong opponent of congestion pricing. He vowed when he was running for office that he would terminate it in his first week. That hasn't happened yet. There's a question if he even could do that if he wanted to. But the hope among opponents is that they could get the Department of Transportation, now run by President Trump's administration, to take another look at it, and maybe that can make a difference. I think there's less hope, at least among the people I've talked to, about the lawsuits doing a whole lot. So assuming it really is here to stay, there are a few things you could do. For one, there are some exemptions, not a lot. I think the one that is most relevant is for vehicles transporting people with disabilities. Those are exempt under the law. So in your household, if you're driving someone with a disability, you may be eligible for an exemption. There are also discounts for people who make less than $50,000 a year. You could get half off the tolls after paying the first 10 each month. And then there's just, one thing, make sure your Easy Pass, get Easy Pass if you don't have Easy Pass. If you don't have Easy Pass, you're automatically paying something like 50% more. Make sure your Easy Pass is linked to your license plate if you want to be billed properly. There is, I don't know how much of an option it is for a lot of people trying to drive outside the peak hours, which again is essentially driving at night, late at night, or the early morning hours. And then there's the option, which is, what the MTA wants to do, which is get more people to take transit instead, whether it's the Long Island Railroad or subways. That's a challenge for a lot of people right now to make that switch, because at the same time that congestion pricing takes effect and they're encouraging people to use transit, there's a lot of concerns about people's safety in transit. You see these high-profile incidents on subways and murders and assaults climbing, and there are a lot of people who are just not comfortable and would rather be in their own car. So that's a sentiment that the MTA is going to have to fight against. And one that, again, I don't know how realistic, but the MTA's mentioned it to me, is carpooling. If you do drive into the city, can you find somebody else to drive with and maybe split the toll a few ways?
Wow. All right. Well, a lot to unpack. A lot of good questions from these commuters. Absolutely. And a lot of good answers from you. Thank you so much, Newsday transportation reporter Alfonso Castillo. Thank you. And also, if you want to know more about congestion pricing, go to newsday.com/congestion pricing. You're watching Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us.